And we are recording. What's going on, my brother?
What's happening, dude?
It's good to see you again and hear you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had a conversation. You visited Colorado Springs a couple weeks ago, and man, was that a powerful conversation? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, it was, and to everyone here, welcome. I think today will be a good conversation to be able to kind of come together, share a little bit about kind of what we do, who we are, specifically to focus on Lane. You see the title, Unleashing Your Humble Alpha. There's a lot of amazing things that we're going to talk about here, but welcome to One on One. I have Lane Belone here, my brother from another mother, and I'm pleased to be able to have this conversation and share with all of you a little bit of the amazing things on his side of the house. And some of the things that he's done. You may hear my service dog from time to time kind of moving around. So that's what we call it background music, theme music.
What's up, legend?
Indeed. You got a chance to meet him as well. So to your point, we had a great meeting. We've been collaborating, and there's a lot I think that we can share to begin to kind of put the beacon out there for folks. But I believe that we've come to an understanding that we're on a path and a mission, and as Vortex is doing some amazing things in the world, we'll unpack that. So some folks might be like, wait a second, what's going on here? I'm like, well, this might be a little bit of a different conversation. But let's take it way back just to be able to kind of, check off the boxes. Tell us a little bit, Lane, about your service, kind of where you grew up at, just kind of give people some context, because, the check boxes have to be there, the service and all the things, so folks can be like, oh, yes, we got that. And then, we get to the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma, a really small town, raised by my mother, and had my sister living. And yeah, grew up and didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I had a lot of ambition. I was in scouts, in sports, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so there's a kind of a funny story of how I joined the military. My friend and I were trying to decide what we wanted to do, and I was like, "Hey, let's go to college." And he's like, "Hey, have you heard of the Army Rangers?" And I was like, "Nope." Sorry, guys. I was 17 at the time. But so, anyways, we played rock paper scissors to decide our destiny. And so we played three times. Best two out of three, he won. We both joined the military. And I didn't become an Army Ranger, unfortunately, but I did serve 12 years, most of which was a Special Forces Green Beret. Had a lot of great experiences, traveled a lot, different types of missions, combat a couple times, some sensitive missions, and had a lot of experience and just really had a great time. And then came to a point in my life where I was like, well, after almost 12 years, I know that the path that I'm on is taking me somewhere else. And so, which, kind of, fast forward leads us to where we're at today. There's a lot of fill in the blanks, but yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to have served the country, to serve a mission bigger than myself, and to really understand what it takes to serve, for something that's just bigger than yourself.
And I love that because one, it's showing progression, it's showing movement forward. Some folks sadly they have a very storied, service or life. And one of the things that we were to talk about is those are chapters in our lives that we were able to check off, right? And for some people, sadly, they may be stuck in transition or they may be stuck in the past of, but Lane, you don't get it. I was a Green Beret and then, left service. Or I did this and then I couldn't do that anymore. Or this was the best times. And it's always kind of a past tense conversation. And I think even changing the narrative just from that perspective alone of, giving credit and homage to what we've been able to do, to the stations in life that we've been able to live and the boxes we go able to check. And I'm saying that carefully, not to be dismissive, but to be inclusive that those are stations like we talked about, right? What's the hesitation at times for us to talk about our service or the things that we've done? It doesn't take away from who we are, but sometimes there's a detachment, it's just like, well, you don't want to talk about being a Green Beret in my side of the house. I don't want to talk about what I did in the military, what I did after the military and the things I did. Like, it's one of those kind of like, you don't want to be boastful, but the same token, there's more to it. And we unpacked a little bit of that stickiness of understanding that these are hats that we've worn. Tell me, unpack a little bit of that from your perspective. I think that's a great point for some folks that may be having, as we begin to unpack this, some identity not crisis, but detachment from certain things or attachments to the past, an inability to look forward. What's some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think as we move forward in life, we first start the journey with attaching our identity to what people tell us who we are. So when we're kids, our parents tell us who we are, our teachers tell us who we are by validation and to credit to those teachers and parents that are very aware, they're able to bring out our gifts. They're able to bring out our skill sets at a very young age, which is great, but most people don't actually experience that. And so we're attached to these stories. And as we move forward in life, our identity becomes the things that we do, the jobs that we have, the roles that we have, and all these things that are external of ourselves, we bring them on as our identity. And the more we move, in the journey, and this is something that we talked about extensively, is that we actually start to understand who we are without anything else, who we are and how do we interact in the world. And so when we remove our titles, we remove our roles and responsibilities, jobs, projects that we're working on, efforts, and what we're left with is us, nothing attached. And most people don't know what that looks like or how to even start to define it. And, that's what the book, Unleash Your Humble Alpha, begins with, is identity. And so as we move forward in life and on our journey, if we're able to unwrap all the external and get to the core of who we are, then we're able to then use our past experiences for however ways that we can connect with prior communities. So like, you and I have the military communities that we can connect with based on our service, based on our deployments, based on this and that. You have certain other communities that you were a part of after military, before the military. Same thing with me. And so we're then able to not detach, but really allow those experiences to be connectors for our own personal mission. And so when we start to clarify our own personal mission, it makes all those other attributes and experiences that much easier for you to move forward and have that credibility, have that validation that, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about because he's done X, Y, and Z, this, and this, and he can be trusted. So identity is the keystone to moving forward in life, to have the things that you want to do and how you want to surround yourself with people that are playing in the same game that you're playing.
I think that's a powerful perspective to look at. For me, and we can attribute different titles to something. But what I enjoyed about our interaction, so full disclaimer, when Lane and I, and we'll pop some pictures up on the post probably and whatnot, but when we met and we spoke for almost 5 hours. 5 intense hours. And for some people, you're like, wait a second, what do you mean? And, one of the things that we were able to resound and kind of come to grips with, it's when you're able to find other individuals who are operating on a frequency similar to yourself, right? So to kind of start to dive deeper into how we're looking at the world, it makes sense to identify certain things. Moving with intention, right? Some would call it a calling. Others would look at manifestations of things or being in your zone. Fill in the blank, label it what you want. The things that we've done are hats. Others would call them keys to be able to use as we strategically begin to move through the world. Because to Lane's point, I was in service. After that, I went to counterterrorism. And, one of the things that in our conversations we've kind of discovered, and this kind of starts to lead into the humble alpha mentality, it's for many at times, what we may identify is we've had false starts, right? Like, you don't get it, Lane, I was supposed to, right? Lane and I actually served pretty much the same amount of time, which is funny, 12 years. And then it was one of those points that's like, I'm done. I'm good. And for some people, everyone, for myself included, E7, ready, easy fast tracking at that point. I had made 7 very early on. I was pretty much ready to roll to 8, or I could have gone commission. There was options on the table. But I came to a point where the things that I came to accomplish in service, I'd accomplished them. Deployments, I was a responder in Ground Zero in New York City. So I've done a lot of different things, but not so much to toot a horn, but to be able to say that I felt fulfilled that now it's time for me to transition to something else. At the time, I didn't know how to articulate that. what I knew was that I was done here. But I didn't have the words to be able to express. So others would have seen that as the inability to finish what you started, or the fact that you should have moved up and done more things, or what do you mean, Lane, you're leaving? Like, you're just on point. This is exactly when it starts to take off. You should do
Yeah.
your 20, get your benefits, finish. And I know for a fact that resounds with you because it's exactly, the same points of what others are seeing or assuming that our life should be. But moving into a place where you're moving, with your internal compass or beginning to lean into it. At first, it was a weak sound. Today, I'm in a different place than I was then. Then I didn't know, but it was that slow, low calling that was just like, you're done here, time to go somewhere else. Today, I'm more receptive and self-aware to listen to that voice. But can you talk about in your transition points, you being able to tune in to that frequency in your own life as you began to move from stuff when people were saying, Lane, what are you talking about? You should not leave this business, or you should not leave service right now. You're crazy. This is where it's supposed to get good. And you're like, all right, folks, I'm good here. On to the next.
Yeah, so I think it's ownership of the journey and being able to know that wherever I go, that I know that that's where I belong at that moment in time, and just understanding that there are chapters in life. And one of the things that I've really been kind of tuning into is this, looking at my life as if it were the length of a summer. And so by doing perspective, you're able to look at your childhood in a couple week process, or you start to look at things from a bigger picture. And so for me, I had a difficult upbringing and had a lot of trauma, a lot of kind of, scarcity mindset. My mom and I were homeless, after I was born. We lived in a homeless shelter. We lived on the lake and all this kind of stuff. Right. But now that I have this perspective, I can say, okay, now I have this perspective of these first 7 years of my life specifically were building a strong foundation of humility. Hence, the first part of the Humble Alpha. And so as I move forward in life, that this humility is always going to be ingrained into who I am. And so it doesn't matter if I rise the ranks of X, Y, and Z, or get to the top of the world, whatever it is, that I always have a firm foundation in humility. And so as I move forward in life and I start to look at these life chapters as small themes or small experiences, and of course they're not small, but in the grand scheme of my whole entire life, they're just a part of it. And so I can start to look at my life and piece things together and say, okay, these things, my service of 12 years gave me X, Y, and Z. Then, before that, scouts and sports gave me X, Y, and Z before, so I'm looking at life from a macro point of view. And so that allows me to let go of the feeling I need to, continue on the thing I started, right? Like you were saying, like people saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that. Like, it's like, because I have ownership of my journey and because you had ownership of your journey, you knew when it was up. And so you were listening to that small voice in your heart that said, hey, and in the earlier days, it was much more subtler, but you still listened to it, and you still not only listened to it, but you took action based on that listening. And so to your credit, to be able to own your own journey and to be able to listen to that inner voice saying, hey, time's up, bro. Like, let's move on to the next thing, and then we start to gather different experiences that playing and operating at a very high level. Now we're coming to this place of consolidation. And this is where I think, stuff that you and I and Steven and a couple other people are going to be doing, that's going to be really exciting, and very excited to see how all that stuff unfolds.
Yeah, and I think it's a powerful point. One question I'll have for you, because I know someone out there may be listening and saying or thinking like, okay, I can identify with that. But if you could go back and talk to yourself, let's say, as you're transitioning service, when maybe that voice for you was a little bit more faint, not as strong as it is today, you're not as in tune as you are today. What would you say today to yourself then? It's a two-parter, actually. What would you say to yourself then? Because I'm sure someone would say, I'm scared. I feel, directionless right now, or maybe it's not my intention to leave this situation, but circumstance is moving me, because there's two ways to look at this. That voice is pulling me one direction. Some would believe, I believe, you can listen to it and lean into it. However, at some point, it will begin to align a series of circumstances that's going to get you to the same point anyway. So it's one of those things of like, okay, Lane, it's time to move. Okay, you're not listening. Let's try this. Let me go ahead and put a few little, I won't call them roadblocks. I'll call them, buffers, kind of on the side, like when you're bowling with the kids and they got a little bumper type of thing,
Oh
like
yeah.
boom, get out of the way, boom, go that way. Those little shifts that happen. What would you say to yourself? Because again, there's gonna be two different answers, and I know this. But to yourself, what would you say if you could say something, or would you let the journey continue? And then the second question is for someone else out there who may not be in tune. What would you say to them as they may feel probably disconnected from their why because their identity was service or whatever they may be doing, and years may have passed, but they're still a little aimless. What would you say to yourself if you could say anything different? And then to someone out there who may not be in tune as you are when it comes to your path and your purpose?
Yeah, I think the message is trust yourself or trust myself. And being able to set that intention to say, I'm going to continue to trust myself. I'm going to continue to trust myself more each day. And so just setting that intention, and you and I are really big on intentions. And what happens whenever you set intentions and you start to actually believe it with your entire being, it becomes that much more relevant in your life. And it becomes that much more truthful and that much more powerful and potent. And because in the beginning, it might just be hope, you know, the intention might just be, I'm going to try to trust myself, and so, but as you feel it out and you set the intention, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And as a byproduct of that, second, third order effects, that you begin to see the world from a different perspective, to where the actions that you took, the behaviors that you exhibit and express, allow you to, gain that feedback that you're on the right track. And so by you're able to witness and experience and feel that feedback that, yes, I'm on the right track. So as I take a next step forward in life and I trust myself with this next step, then I'm able to receive the feedback and then build upon that confidence. And so it becomes a snowball effect. And, it takes a little bit of time, but trust yourself. Trust yourself. That's my message, and that would be the message for other people. But I guess for other people, there might be needing context. And so I think that by understanding that the intentions that we set are incredibly powerful, and the more that we adhere to them and live by them and be very thoughtful and intentional with our intentions, we're able to see the unfolding reality creating right in front of us, that the intentions become truth. The intentions become reality more and more each day. The more we believe in them, the more we put energy behind these intentions. And it's just you just got to go, just got to do it, because it could sound hokey. It could sound weird. It could sound like, hey, is it that simple? It really is.
Mm. What does intention mean to you?
It means the beginning of something, how or the approach of something. So in our book, we talk about the difference between intentions and expectations. Expectations, as defined by us, is a result or an outcome, and sometimes the how that outcome is going to happen. So, for instance, for this interview right here, an expectation is that, all right, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that, and it's got to be very specific, and I have a whole bunch of questions, and I want these specific answers, and there's some validity to that kind of stuff too. But an intention versus an expectation would be, we're going to have an incredible, powerful conversation. We're going to create space, and I have no idea, what exactly we're going to talk about. We have some ideas. We got some stuff in our back pocket if we want to pull it out. We got some, tools in our tool belt. But we're going to create space and then see what kind of greatness or what kind of value we can unpack in this powerful conversation. So the intention is the approach to something, or a start or a beginning of how we want to start this conversation or start this way of the project or something like that.
And I think it's and I appreciate that, because to now give a parallel for those listening, it's really not that a complex concept. And I mean
No.
that to say that from a military perspective, there's a parallel. There's tactics and there's techniques. When you start looking at how you do something, let's just get very, very, micro for a second and tactical. You could be part of a squad, and the objective here is to do a breach, right? You've practiced it 20 different times. You know who's running point, you know who has six, and you know everybody has their role. That being said, the fundamentals remain the same of what you're doing. How you execute it, though, will vary based on the terrain. You may train in a safe environment and you know the layout, but when it's real world, you don't know the layout sometimes. So you have to trust the fact that, you know what your training is to do something, but you'll adapt and go. There may not be a door to breach. There may have to be, a hole to make. Whatever the case may be, you're going to kind of flow with what's presented to you, and you're trusting that your training and the tactics that you have are going to be able to be agile. Right. So people talk about agile, right? There's parallels there from a business perspective. We're going into this meeting. We know we're going to have a conversation. That said, we also want to be fluid to the fact that there may be some changes where it's like, wait a second, we have to pivot because actually this is the route to go. Same thing if you were conducting, some tactics, some operations and whatnot. So from a military perspective, it's the same thing, right? What's the intention that we're bringing to this, right? The commander's intent.
Right? We want to get in that door.
Exactly.
Right?
What's
how
the commander's?
we do it?
Exactly.
Could be one of any 20 ways. So our intent is to get in that door. And so we can gather intelligence. We can, read the terrain. We can see all that stuff and develop some kind of plan, because we don't need to go into life blind.
Yes.
But it's that balance between, like you said, that preparedness, and that's where I think we're coming to a place where it's just we're experienced and we trust ourselves wholly and fully. And so then with that energy, we can read the moment and see what the moment calls for, and then act or say or vibe accordingly. Right. And that's a great place to be.
And I love that. And I think it's something that if we are able to put words to it, it's not a foreign concept that cannot be attained. Right. When and I'm making the parallels to the military because many can relate to that, obviously, in the audience. But it's no different than a junior officer moving up, understanding commander's intent. A lower enlisted junior person doesn't understand intent. All they know is the directions they're given. But at a certain point, you move up to where now you begin to look at strategy, what the commander is trying to do. And the intent is to the point, we're going to get through this door, or we're going to take the offensive and hold this ground, or we're going to conduct said campaign operation. And then those that are on the ground will tactically deploy that within the confines of the commander's intent, hence rules of engagement, things of that such. So flip the narrative. Now to this point here, how do we apply these things to life? Because again, there's lessons that are there and you all have the tools. We have the tools. We just don't know how to be able to kind of repurpose them at times. But it's the same exact thing of what's the intention? It's to come here, hold space, and provide value. The expectation, sadly, I think, is what many individuals tend to get wrapped up with or on. For example, some people will say, give without that expectation, because what happens is then you come across already trying to expect an outcome or subconsciously force an outcome needlessly, when the reality is that I came in here to spend some time and talk with you. Little did I know all these other things would come. If I walk into the space expecting a result, I'm going to miss everything. It's like the Bruce Lee movie of Enter the Dragon. It's like, look at the moon, and Bruce Lee's pointing up and the kid's pointing at the finger, and Bruce Lee smacks him in the head and says, look not at the finger, look at the moon. You're going to miss all that heavenly glory. And sometimes that's what happens. We get focused on what I expect to see, and we lose literally the bigger picture. And those are tangible things that we do and are dealing with in life from time to time, which goes into the humble alpha aspect. Now, a question. Humble alpha. Kind of an oxymoron, some would say. What is humble alpha to you?
So yeah, that's a really tough one, because it's it's full spectrum, full encompassing way of life. But breaking down the humble alpha, humility is this invisible force within us, and the more that we can tap into that invisible presence, that invisible force that is us, that is removed of filters, remove of should do's, remove of all these things that people say that we should do. And whenever that's left unfiltered, we have this invisible presence. And the humble, that's the humble part. The alpha is how do we intentionally express ourselves in an action based world. So like, you and I could be go-getters and we could just have this go-getter mentality and all this kind of stuff. But whenever we direct our focus on a certain project or a certain theme or a certain XYZ, that becomes more of a masculine type of thing. And so by only needing to express that alpha when the moment calls for it, to the degree in which we need to express it, and we don't need to be overly powerful because our presence speaks for itself. And so when we decide to speak, when we decide to direct traffic, to quarterback a situation, to lead, whatever the case may be, then our words are that much more heavier. And we can say it in a playful way, of course, but we don't have to, be an asshole. We don't have to be this, chip on the shoulder guy, alpha, I got to prove everything to the world, because we don't need to prove anything to anyone, because we know ourselves, we trust ourselves, and we just know that we don't need to compensate for anything in life, and we're just doing what we do. And so that's one of the ways I explain the humble alpha, or how I look at the humble alpha. I mean, there's a lot of different ways, but that's one of my favorite kind of explanations.
No, I love that. When I first, kind of came in contact with you and Steven and really began to kind of dive deep into the concept, it makes me think of a lot of ways to decipher this. Right. And
it's layered.
It's layered, but I really love the fact that it almost kind of another, for those that say that may subscribe or see like Gary Vaynerchuk, right? He's big on, empathy and so forth. But one of the things he's big on is pulling from both extremes. All right. He's big on this on being in the clouds and in the dirt. And someone says, well, what do you mean clouds and dirt? He's like, he's macro, but he's executing micro, but he's also here. He's both pulling on this end and this end, right? Like, when you look at the fact that you have the ability to calibrate what you need to do and be, that shows that it's not a one speed, operation, right? A vehicle has different drives. When I need to go into third gear, I go, or second or fourth, and so forth. And being able to have this balance, some would say, you can't be humble in alpha. Says who? The reality is, for someone who only has a hammer, everything is a nail. But understanding that, again, we've trained to use different tools for different things. Sometimes I need to execute this tool or deploy this, skill set. I have to have empathy here. I need to be humble here, or I need to be alpha there. That flow of being able to own that goes back to what we talked about, which is the hats that we've worn, the things that we've gone through. Because for me, myself, like we talked, upbringing of humility. Right? You're average. You're not anything, humble beginnings. Some would take some of the words that were spoken into our lives as being suppressive. And I think to a degree, it's about perspective, where it allowed me to a good degree to go through life very kind of under the radar. But every so often, there'd be a breakthrough where it's just like, oh, I didn't see you coming. And I'm sure, and we talked about this when we talked, where it's like, we didn't know the powers that we held, the energy that we had, where you can walk into a place and manifest and have a presence to yourself. And that's not something that's, for some may be out there and hokey, but really it's that invisible energy that we understand. Everybody's met someone that when they walk into a room, something changes. And you can't deny it. There's just something that happens when so-and-so took the stage and everything just stopped and I just saw that person. Some would say, Lane, you don't understand, man. I got a chance to see Michael Jackson live, or Prince, or, fill in the blank. And when he took the stage, everything just stopped. And all I saw was this person, and I felt it. And even though I was in the nosebleed section, I felt that vibe and that energy. Or I was there, I saw Bob Marley, perform. I heard Martin Luther King speak. I was way out there, but I felt it. That energy, that vortex, which I want to kind of start sliding into, I think is powerful. I want to share a story. Lane and I are having a conversation today. We had a very great conversation in person. I didn't know he was in Colorado, but I had business to do in Colorado. And rewinding back even more, the way we came into communion and fellowship and brotherhood and, fill in the blank was very unique because we were in a sea of about 15,000 people. And when we talk about the fact of, well, how did you make a connection so quick with someone? I think it goes to the frequency thing that I introduced at first. And this is not to be a detriment to anyone. Rather, it's to be able to highlight that if the focus is white lights, and we're surrounded by white lights, when you see a red light or a green light, it catches your eye because there's a shift there, right? And I'm being intentional with the words because some would try to paint it differently, but really we're surrounded by different energy fields and individuals that are on their path and mission. But when you recognize that there is a frequency out there that resounds with you, you spot it a mile away. And it's one of those things where it's like, with technology and everything that's happening, I saw that red dot in the distance. And it's funny because I'm sitting there going, huh. And then the weirdest part is when you see someone looking back at you going, hey.
Wait a second. Did you just see what I saw?
Talk a little bit about that from your perspective. That's kind of how I interpret, this, because some people are quick to say, Lane, how did you guys do these things so quickly? Or how did this happen so fast for you? And it's not a speed thing. It's a frequency conversation. Can you talk a little bit about that on your side? Because we talked a little about it as far as being able to identify and connect in a sea of activity where literally all we saw was those red dots.
Yeah, so I think the first comment is the intention of allowing vortexes, that's the word we're going to use, to enter your field. And that's the intention. And how we define vortexes, there's probably a number of different ways, but powerhouses that are humble alphas that, operate under humility, but are powerful, beautiful people, have huge hearts, and a whole bunch of other great attributes. But so that's the intention. And it goes back to the simplicity of how we can live life is like, look, I'm going to set the intention that great people are going to enter my life. And so that's the first thing. And then being able to listen or see or feel or whatever the sensation or whatever it is that you're going to be able to recognize that red dot or that green dot in a field of, white lights, white dots, or whatever you want to call it. And so being able to, one, observe it and see it or feel it or however it comes to you. And then two, take action on it and say, hey, and this is exactly what happened with us is like, I don't know what's going on here, but I feel something pretty special. I really don't know what's going to happen. And again, this is operating at a certain frequency. Like you said, is that, if I'm operating under, a red dot and you're operating under a red dot, Steven's operating under a red dot, and that's just a certain frequency that we're not only operating on ourselves, but I feel that we have a trajectory of a certain way of where we're going, of what we want to accomplish in life or what kind of impact that we want to create in the world. And so I think that also plays into the people that are brought into our lives of not only who we be, because being is first cause, like who we are, and then the actions that we take, the words that we say, the thoughts that we have, those are all a result of our, who we are, our beingness. And so the intention, we set it, we observe it, we see it, we feel it, and then we take action on it and say, hey, I'm going to create some space. Let's have a chat. Yeah. And I have no idea where it's going to go, but I feel like we were supposed to meet, we were supposed to chat. And again, this, it could be any number of things. It could be that, it could have been that you and I just chatted one time and we had a very impactful conversation and we really helped each other, clarify something or bring out some kind of greatness within each other. And then we're going to move on our own journeys. That could have been the case. And we were both okay with that, Or it could be that we just keep on feeling what the moment calls for and letting go of expectations and allowing ourselves to be whole and full in that moment and create space see what happens, create the mastermind, and allow whatever wisdom, intelligence, knowledge flow through all of us and create some kind of profound vision, create some kind of profound clarity or articulation that allows us to move forward powerfully, beautifully, yet humbly in our not only individual missions in life, but as a collective or as a group of, or a team or whatever you want to call it.
And I love that, and that's literally what happened. We connected. I had business arrangements that had me going to Colorado, and the funny thing is, I had not booked my travel arrangements, and I was kind of procrastinating. Some would say. I've come to understand in life that there's times where naturally things just start to happen and fall into place. So for me, I know that it's not procrastination at times. Sometimes I'm just waiting. And it's kind of one of those, like the Nicolas Cage meme where he's like, let's go. You know what I mean? Like you're just waiting for that moment. And I didn't know what it was, but everybody was like, DP, everything's good to go. We're booked. Everybody's traveling. What's your plans? I was like, don't have any yet. And they're like, what do you mean? And I go, I'm coming, but I'm not pulling the trigger yet, because I'm being sensitive to the moment of what, to make sure things align. All that to say, what ended up happening is we had a conversation, and in the trajectory of the conversation, you say, the weather's pretty good here in Colorado Springs. And immediately I was like, there it is. And I
Boom.
said, funny you should say that. I'm actually heading down there next week. And you go, really? We got to link up. After that, everything began to fall into place. We were able to meet, have a conversation.
Keystone moment.
Exactly. And I think that's really going to a place where we're going to jump to the web, and I want to show the book. But there's a key point in what you said that I would like you to explain from yourself, which is that masculine awakening. And I say that because as men, sometimes as men, as veterans, as people that deal with things at times, being able to be receptive and open and holding space, it's like, wait a second, that's all that feely, funky stuff. I don't do none of that stuff. I got all that I need. I don't need another person. I don't need another coach. And literally, like you said, I don't know where all this will go, but I know that right now, which goes back to the journey, I don't know the destination endpoint. I don't have an expectation of what things will be, but my intention is to be present right now. And right now, we're holding this space. Right now, we are having a dialogue and we are re-energizing each other to do something. What that may be is yet to be defined, but sometimes we get so focused on the end point, we've missed all of what's happening right now. But that goes into that masculine awakening of being able to be awakened to truly as a man, I have the ability to let other men speak into my life, to be open and receptive to the fact that I don't have to know it all, because back to the military, you had a breacher, you had someone holding your six. It was a reason it's called a team. You had a fire squad. Everyone did a specific thing. So now in life, it's no different, right? There's something you're bringing to my life and I'm bringing to your life. And if we see it that way, it changes the dynamics of just, well, I don't want to come across as weak or not knowing my stuff or not being high speed, low drag. But can you talk a little bit about what masculine awakening means to you?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's a multifaceted discussion for sure. But it's this connection piece to where being grounded and rooted in the moment and understanding this kind of intangible connection between all of us. And so, you and I have this intangible connection right now. And having that connection, being grounded, allows us to open up whatever needs to happen in this moment, and trusting that whatever you have to say, whatever questions that you're going to ask, whatever answers I'm going to say, or vice versa, that all of this is in a container to where the greatest thing can happen, the most valuable thing can happen, where we both can step into our greatness to whatever the moment can dictate. And so by trusting that and understanding that both of us operate under that kind of principle, that kind of value system, it allows us to then let go of any thing that we're holding on to tightly. And, for guys, it's like, oh, I don't want to give up control, or I don't want to show my emotions, or I don't want to feel really, hard, or I don't want to feel at all. And so by having this kind of like really tight grip of these beliefs, these rules for ourselves, that is always going to limit us as we expand, as we grow, as we move forward in our journey. And, so kind of tying it back to, a very specific military example is that us as military people have been to the extreme in a lot of cases of deployments, situations, all this kind of stuff, to where we've experienced kind of dark places, whether that be combat, or dark parts of the world, or being away from family for a long time, all these different things that is normal for somebody in the military. We've experienced that extreme. And because we've experienced that extreme, we're then able to experience the goodness on the opposite spectrum of the really incredible, but only if we let go of the story of the extreme. So you kind of were hitting upon earlier, like, DP, you don't understand, like I was X, Y, and Z, and this is a touchy subject for sure. But what it really is that, from my perspective, is of empowerment, and knowing that every veteran that has ever served, no matter their story, they have something very strong within them, something very profound, something very divine, and being able to empower everyone that has served. And, of course, this applies to anyone else that hasn't served, but specifically to veterans, is that, you have the potential to let go of that story and write a new one. But it's up to you to decide to let go of the story, change the story, have the story transition in a certain way that is to your liking. However it unfolds for you, that is the decision that you have to make. And whenever you're able to then let go of that old story, that old extreme, you are then able to live on the opposite spectrum of the goodness, of the abundance, the good stuff coming your way.
Mm-hmm. And I love that, because that then leads into manifestation and our relationship with things. And we talked a little bit about this, but specifically, as you start to look at all the things we're talking about, are really the building blocks of moving into a place of unleashing your humble alpha. Because really, a tactical way to look at this is, but how am I going to, we're going to the web, how do I navigate the world? So I, for example, as I align myself with my why, I know part of my calling, part of my strength is understanding that there's a calling on me and there's a magnetism pulling me forward. Right. And I want to present that concept, because some would say, well, lean into, or you're driving through, or you're pushing towards, or you're moving forward. And I've come to a place where I understand that by letting go of things, to your point of past, yes, I was a veteran. Yes, I served. Yes, I did these things. Yes, I was in counterterrorism. But those are things that are chapters of my life. It's not the last chapter, it's a chapter. I don't negate it because I'm writing a new chapter. It's the book of my life. It's who I am as in my reality. And as I need to, I can go to different chapters and pull things out as I need, but I continue to move forward, to use a book example. But I think that as I understand now that for me, there's something pulling me forward, the less I resist to it, the more it amplifies that magnetism that's pulling me in my purpose. I feel the need to be present and be a voice for those that don't have voices. I feel the need to be able to create space to have a connection and be able to deliver what needs to be delivered. And understanding that that's the position and the vessel that I choose to be, and I am letting go to fully embrace what that means and manifest in different ways, that brings manifestation, which is now, if we're going to do this thing, we need these resources. Those resources are called money, support, backing, fill in the blank. I'm not having an expectation that this conversation, this book I'm going to write, this conversation that I will give, or this event that will happen is going to lead to a tool. Rather, I need these tools to continue to advance. So I'm not doing this for a payday. I'm not doing this to say, well, how am I going to make ends meet? The focus, again, not on the finger, but the heavenly glory. I'm looking at a whole different place. So now when people say, well, how Lane and DP, how are you guys moving so quickly? It's the frequency that we're operating in that's making things happen at a speed where it's like, I don't feel that I am moving fast, but I understand in relation to the world that I am moving fast, which is no different than being in a train. Relative, and I'm sitting in the train and I see things moving past me that's not moving as fast. And it doesn't mean I'm moving fast. I'm in this train that's moving at a certain speed in relation to other things. Yes, there is a difference. This train is moving at 100 miles an hour and that inanimate object is not moving. Hence, there's a difference. Or another train parallel to it is going slower. But it's just the frequency, the track, the train that I am in that now allows me to be able to understand, let me just be and begin to move in this, and slowly things start falling into place. I call it flow. Some would call it divine intervention or what have you. But the fact of the matter is, the things that I need to accomplish what I have to do are already there. And that changes the entire narrative because I'm not focused on the tools, which means those tools come to me. Some would call that the law of attraction, but it's understanding and really honing into the power that's inside of you. That's my belief system and how me and Lane kind of see the world. But I want to kind of pass it to you. Then we're going to jump over to the book and show folks where they can find some information about this. But as far as unleashing and really beginning to walk in that fullness of who we are, because it's not so much about information only, and you talked about this, but it's beginning to put action to it. What do you do when you begin to unleash this? Well, that's the fun part. But for you, what are some of your thoughts on that there?
Yeah, so I think it's first cause is vision, where we want to go, what kind of experience we want to create, what thing we want to create, and that could mean a very tangible thing. And the tangible example is a house, that we have a vision for this house. And for certain rooms, for certain custom builds, you're going to need specific tools, and of course there's going to be tools that are universal for every single house, but there's going to be, depending on, and my view on life is that we all have a unique expression of life. We have our own unique gifts and no two people are the same. Yes, we can find inspiration and we can use other people's journey as reference points or points of inspiration to get us into alignment with who we really are. Once we have that vision for ourselves, the tools start to come, and so for some people, those tools look like self-help books and self-help courses. To other people, tools look like musical teachers that are going to teach them how to play the cello because that is their divine gift. Other people, it's going to be some kind of other form of expression, art, writing, creating physical things, mentors in all these different areas in which we ourselves are unique. But it begins with the vision. And so I think a lot of people focus on the tools, but they haven't actually asked themselves what they truly want in life, their vision for themselves, the vision for their company, because it's the opposite of what most people think, is that when you have the vision, the people start to come into your life, the ideas and inspiration start to come, answers start to come, epiphanies start to come, the right tools, the right resources, the right funding, all these things are a second and third order effect of the vision. But if you're so focused on, I need to acquire a bunch of tools, it's like, but what are you building? And so a lot of people get stuck into that. And this is where, to tie it into a quick, business example, is that so many people are focused on the business model. Some people are focused on the way in which I need to set up my systems in my business, but they don't even know what the vision for the business is. They don't know what their mission is, and they don't know what it is for themselves either. And so by not having these kind of intangible things, they're not able to acquire the right tools, because once you have the vision for the business, then the tools and the resources become crystal clear, and maybe not initially, but you automatically go from pointing due west to say, oh wait, no, I need to point north. And so then, you can be off a couple of degrees or whatever. But as you move forward and start taking action upon that, then the tools that are that much more refined that you need in your life, or the same thing with the connections and people, those are going to start falling into place. And so vision is first. And I guess one last thing to add that is whatever vision that you have right now, go for it. And as long as it's resonating and aligned with who you are, go for it, take action. And like you were saying, it's not about you're in a hurry to do anything, but you're just moving in that direction as you would anywhere else. Like it's not like it's a race. We're not trying to sprint anywhere. It's just taking the next step. And so many people get caught in thought, and they think about, oh, this is probably not going to work. Oh, this is probably going to go wrong, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And that hesitation, that thought, is preventing them from taking a step, in which each step that they take forward, i.e. action, allows them for the next unfoldment of connection, idea, person, resource, what have you. And as you move forward, it's just that much more easier for you to pull an audible, and being able to say, hey, that initial vision that I had for myself and my business, it got me to a certain point, but I needed to get to this certain point in order for me to get to the real, the next more clear vision. And that's just, we just have to be okay with creating a vision that we feel is the right one at the time, and then asking ourselves, what does the moment call for? What does this moment in my journey call for, in my business call for? And let me answer honestly. And then based on that honest answer, I take action and continue to move forward in the journey.
And now I would add, just to give yourself grace as those audibles come up, right?
100%.
Again, there's different ways to add that, but being agile to know that you're not wrong if there's a pivot now or things begin to go another way, because it's like an artist, right? You see, and I would implore, whether you're into business or whatever you're doing, lean into that, because you're operating in your space and your gift. And if you have that eye, that artist, and we use examples to make it tangible to different people, but you see the vision of what you want. It's a blank canvas. Me and Lane may not see what you're seeing, but you see, like, you don't understand. I see it already. And as you begin to take those paintbrushes now, to your point, it's now because I know what I want to manifest on this canvas. Now I know the tools that I need, versus I'm going to get all the color palettes and all the brushes and all these different things, and you don't even know what you're going to draw. But when you
might not only need four utensils or 4 tools, versus like, I got to gather 25 different tools. I don't know if I'll need them all, but I'm going to gather them. Versus like, okay, this is the painting I want to create. This is the vision I want to create. I only need 4 tools. I didn't know that until I, started to develop that vision.
Which then, from a business perspective, it makes you, one, more economical in what you're doing, right? There's resource management that you're not spending needlessly, because now you're more intentional and focused into what you're doing, because and we see it, and you do consultations with business leaders and so forth, but you see that where folks literally just have no direction. They're spending money and they're bleeding money, and you're like, what's happening here? How do we correct this? Well, you correct it by being able to truly kind of hone some of this. But I want to make a quick jump over for folks to be able to find some of the information here, and I wanted to start here, because on your Instagram, Increase Freedom, I want to ask you, one, what does increasing freedom mean to you? And some would see just very great pictures here of landscapes and so forth, but there's actually, this is a different thing. It's not just, again, I bring it now because understanding how we see the world, now these things mean different things. So talk to me a little bit about, for you, what does increased freedom mean, and what are some of the images and what they mean to you that we're seeing here?
Yeah, so increased freedom is about increasing freedom. So I'm a guy that just loves freedom. I like to go and explore and pioneer. And the more I can increase that part of myself and inspire other people to do the same, I feel that I'm expressing exactly who I am by doing that. And that's exactly, what my Instagram is kind of about. It's really about vibrating at a specific frequency of enjoying nature, enjoying exploration, elevating other people, and reminding people that they have this very powerful potential and greatness within them. And by expressing a certain frequency, it automatically allows other people to tune into that frequency of, you know what, I am actually great, or yeah, I can do this, or man, I know I need to get out into nature more. Maybe I need to just appreciate beauty and my relationships more. Whatever that frequency is, as they are being exposed to it and receive it, that's the idea of anything that I do in life, is that as I continue to progress in my journey, I'm going to increase my frequency, and it's going to be high vibratory. It's going to be filled with love, wisdom, light, goodness, fun, playfulness, all this kind of stuff. And that's just where I'm going to operate. So hence, everything that I create, everything that I express is operating under that frequency. So if anybody looks at my stuff, they're like, man, this is kind of nice stuff, or maybe it's like uplifting, or maybe it was a powerful message that I needed to hear today. And I'm not trying to do anything. All I'm doing is simply expressing. And because I'm expressing at my frequency and what I, radiate, and all these different attributes of myself, because we're all very more complex than we realize, of course, and we live full spectrumly. I'm able to express all these different aspects of myself. Sometimes it's very uplifting. Sometimes it's motivational. Sometimes it's kicking the ass. Sometimes it's like, hey, this is some beautiful shit. I want you to see this, So it's a whole bunch of different stuff, but it's all me. And how other people receive it, it's up to them on their journey. My intention is that I'm planting seeds of positive energy. I actually created a meditation about this. But basically, I don't control other people's journeys, nor do I intend to. The only thing that I do is I express and I plant seeds around the world, and how other people water that seed, how they grow that seed, how they cultivate that seed, and perhaps turn it into a garden. And then they themselves become a gardener and plant other seeds out, and in this radiant value kind of aspect. That's up to them and on their journey. And I have no responsibility for any of that. But I'm doing my part by being who I am exactly, and continuing to hone in on what that actually means for me. And as I move forward in life, I'll get even more clear.
And I think that goes back to the point of being vortexes. As we're energies moving through the world, it changes my perspective on life, right? And because of that, the vortex is leaving things that are manifesting and happening. Some would call that this business, this movement, this thing, this, that. But I'm just moving. And in the wake of that ripple effect, as a force of nature, that begins to intensify. So again, I think it's just good for people to see that, because now it gives context when people see the things that you're sharing. I want to also share here the book you brought up specifically, and where they can find it at humblealphabook.com. An amazing book. Here we have some excerpts, information. You and Steven, business partners, are doing amazing things here. You have the ability to order the book and get some information, and you see all of the happy readers and lives that are being changed. What's something that you want someone that comes to this site to kind of take away and do?
I think it's trust. So first and foremost, Steven and I not only trust ourselves, but we trust each other. And so the content of the book is that of trust. And we have a lot of people that also trust the book. And anybody that may go to the site and be skeptical or anything like that, it's about trust. And that's all that we can showcase. That's all we can vibrate and radiate. And that's part of why we have so many people posting the pictures and sharing their insights and all these really profound things that are happening because of the book, is because to reach a lot of people, to get to the masses, we know that we need trust. And the faster that we can build trust, the easier it is for someone to be like, you know what? I didn't really vibe with everything, but like I just had a really good feeling of this conversation. DP and Lane just like really sounded thoughtful, authentic. And if they're telling me to buy the book, maybe I just trust them versus, you know, being ultra skeptical in life and not taking the action steps that we need to take. So
I love that because again I brought up Amazon because it's available there, but I would encourage folks to go to humblealphabook.com because there's a part down here where you can download an excerpt of the book. Give it a try. Check it out. It's changing lives. It's truly what I see here. It's not only just happy customers, but it's truly a kaleidoscope, a tapestry of the individuals from all walks of life, all colors, all shades, all ages that are able to unleash their humble alpha, both men and women, because that's another part here that I think is powerful in seeing this, where it's like, well, DP or Lane, is it too late? No, it's not too late. You can unleash your humble alpha. This book gives you those tools and begins the conversation. But I see people here of different backgrounds, of different age, both men and women, who are being impacted and are actually taking action, and their lives are changing. So I love this here because it really kind of it smacks you with the energy and positivity of what this book and this movement means, because the book is not just you guys decide to write a book. This was literally your lives kind of coming together, and this was produced off of you guys collaborating and just being able to hold space that now gives others the ability to take this knowledge, this information, and apply those tools that both you and Stephen have been able to go through and learn over a period of time for others in their journey.
Yeah, and I think it's articulating context and perspective, because ultimately what the book is really doing is to know thyself or to be yourself. But it's like, well, how do I do that? And so the book provides context, it provides perspective, it provides powerful concepts, it provides action steps. It gives you the tools to be yourself. And that's really the root of it, because once we're being ourselves, all those other powerful things that we were talking about earlier start to come to us. The vision of like, oh, I know who I am, I know where I'm going. Oh, it's really easy for me to get there because it's really easy. Like I set the intention, I allow the great people to come into my life, the tools, resources come, and then boom, I just watch it unfold.
And this is humblealpha.club, where folks can sign up to gain access to get more information on the different offerings that you all have available. But there's some real good news here. So I want folks to just know you have humblealphabook.com. There's an excerpt of the book all the way at the bottom. You can go to Amazon, find the book there as well. But there's a pretty cool thing over here going on. What am I looking at here, my brother, that just literally went live? Wait a second, there's a book. What is this that I am looking at, my friend?
Yeah, so we have the book, and it is now a college course. It's a professional development certificate, and we partnered up with a really great person, and they have an institute, and they did all the work of creating all the stuff from the book and put it into a very digestible course. And at the end of the course, you actually get a certificate. And so here we have the trailer right here, really done really well. And so what this allows is that for people that read the book, sometimes, especially if you're listening to an Audible or on Kindle, this allows for you to take the action steps and go at your own pace. Because when you read a book in a weekend, it's great to really consume all the information, but you don't get that contemplative kind of digesting result when you do something consistently for a long time in really tiny bite-sized chunks. So by being able to break it up into small digestible steps, you're able to allow these really powerful concepts, these principles, and these action steps that if you just rush through it, you're going to get some really profound results, 100%. But if you take your time and allow these questions to really digest it, like what do they really mean by quality of life, or what do they mean by this question when I'm trying to extract my own greatness? And so it slows things down and allows you to really take a slower step and allow that contemplation and those insights and epiphanies to come in those moments where you least expect it. Because, when you intentionally think about, okay, how am I going to answer this question that they just asked me to help me clarify my own identity? And like what types of states or what types of activities do I feel like I'm in a state of flow where I lose track of time, where 4 hours can go by and it felt like 2 minutes, so I can think about that intentionally and focus on it intently in the present moment. But if I allow it to kind of like happen, throughout the day or throughout the next couple hours, like something really powerful, like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like, or it might just happen in conversation where like your wife was talking about that, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever. Yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, that really reminds me of that answer that I'm looking for. So that's what this course also, and for people that are in organizations or leaders of organizations, this is a really great leadership professional development certificate that you can take to where everybody in the organization, company, business, team is operating under a very similar set of rules, or it's almost like a manual for extracting greatness. And so it's great that a leader would read this book, but it would be even greater where everybody within the organization reads the book or takes this course and allows to see the second and third order effects of what all of these things mean in the book and in the course to actually unfold in your company.
And I think it just speaks to the fact that the intention, again, right, was not to write a book, but the culmination of your energy fields of what you were doing, being in your space, created this moment that manifested as a book. In turn, now has benefited all these individuals, but it went a step further to where now it's not just a course, it's literally going deeper into the material, where you're having the ability to take a deeper dive, not just a quick read, because many of us absorb things differently, but to be able, again, going back to what this provides. Now, it's not so much, the certificate per se, it's the deeper dive of having that instruction with the folks that are able to go beyond the words. Because one thing is, I read this book and it meant a lot to me and it did something and it unlocked a lot and answered questions, but now I'm able to get more from the source that maybe some things in translation may have not come across. And we've all done it. You can read a book, but it's different when you have the ability to access, the fountain where the information came from, right? Or being able to actually learn from those that put together said book. And it's no different than many other books that we may have read, where it's like, I read, so-and-so's book, but I was able to also see him in person or see them in person and actually gain more insight into that. Because even with this conversation, people are able to get more of an insight into who you are, how you see the world, which in turn now changes how I absorb the book because of understanding where you're coming from. So I think this is amazing to share for those that are out there, to be able to add context again to what truly is the humble alpha movement, and truly unleashing it, not only by reading the book and coming into alignment with the community, but even this new course that deep dives into it.
Yep.
As we start to kind of wrap up here, Lane, question I have for you. We've kind of went around and talked about different things. We've unpacked things. This is the first of many conversations, because again, there's a lot that has to be unpacked. But from an introduction standpoint, for folks to be able to kind of really see where you're coming from, being able to tomorrow have a conversation with Steve and then having a round table and talking, let's say the three of us, I think it just adds more to it, because every time I ask a question, it's for a reason that the answer usually kind of started saying, well, it's kind of a lot to unpack, or it's complex, but so we want to do justice to present the information, but we could literally just spend an entire session just talking about the humble aspect or the alpha aspect and all the pieces in between. So it's a lot to digest, but trying to break it down into like an introductory conversation, I think kind of sets the stage for what's to come. But for those that may be out there, we kind of answered it a little bit, but what would you say, or what would you project out there to those that might say to you, I see the path that you're on, Lane. I see the path you're on, DP. I can see that, there's humble alphas operating, but I don't think that's me. I don't think that's something for me. I'm not an alpha. I'm not, I might be humble or maybe not even that humble, but that's not a thing for me. What would you speak into those individuals out there that may not be able to resound, or just the name alone might just, kind of, they might not be in a place yet to receive that or move or operate in that space?
Yeah, I would say ask yourself why you have that feeling or that comment or that question, and be and honest with that answer, because these comments of like, oh, well, I'm not that kind of guy, I'm not that kind of girl, I don't operate like that, I'm not trying to do this in life, I'm not trying to. So all these things are very limiting in our capacity, our potential for greatness. And I know, Stephen knows that every single person has greatness within them. That unique expression of how it looks and how it feels is all different, because that's the nature of the journey, is that no two people are alike. And being able to ask yourself, why did I have that reaction to whatever it is that you and I just said? And like, oh, that's not me. So just ask yourself, why did I have that um, initial response or reaction, and then be honest with the answer, because that is going to unlock something within you if you do something about it. And so it's going to reveal a limiting belief. It's going to reveal a mindset that is really holding you back, because it's all, we're writing our own story. And some people, they need a story written to where they get in a near death experience, a car crash, an XYZ, you name it, to where they turn their life around, where they've been drinking for 20 years and they finally got a DUI, almost killed somebody. Oh, I need to shift my life around. That's a story. And of course, we won't go into the gravity of all that kind of stuff, but keeping it kind of like a little bit at a higher conversation. Some people don't need that kind of jolt in life. They just need to identify the limiting belief that is holding them back in order for them to change direction and then go straight, or due north. So the reaction, the response that someone might have for any of the stuff that we talked about is revealing to themselves some type of limitation. And if they are honest with it, they can address it, and then they can move on from it and expand into their next best version of themselves, whatever that looks like for them on their journey.
Awesome. I think all I could say is just doubling down on that. I think being self-aware and sensitive to just stopping and understanding why is this happening, because sometimes it just could be limiting beliefs that are at play here, which again, going back to the book, I think really starts to look at one of the things I loved here specifically on the on the back end. It's, I love this one piece here where you see the top, unleash your humble alpha, the key factor, but really looking at the fact that it's, the leader you've always wanted it to be idles right beneath the surface. And that line, to me, it just speaks volumes, because for many individuals, it's there, but that limiting belief, or that I can't, no, you can. And hopefully this conversation shows that there's no difference between where Lane is at in life, or I'm at in life, or you. We may be operating at different frequencies, but we've leaned into some of that discomfort initially that really was just more that resistance of something new, because it's like an aircraft. The only way an aircraft, is able to fly and take off is going into resistance. And that's not saying that there's going to be resistance and challenges. Yes, those things manifest themselves, but it's understanding leaning into that thing, right? You jump out of an aircraft, you can't deploy the parachute unless you just let go. So in this conversation, I think hopefully for many out there, you get a better perspective, not only into kind of how we see the world and Lane's perspective, and beginning to have the conversations of unleashing your humble alpha, but I think it's truly unleashing it starts with that first part of letting go of some of those limiting beliefs, and like Lane said, let me stop for a second and see what exactly is the reason why maybe I'm not trying to go that way, or is the reality is that maybe I feel that I can't. So hopefully this conversation was able to add some context for someone to say that, you can unleash your humble alpha. You can lean into, you can let go and begin to move in a new chapter of your life, which doesn't negate the past chapters. It's just moving to write a new chapter. Your best days are not behind you. Your best days still lie ahead of you. But I would offer to you all to stop and just really embrace the moments and be able to appreciate what's happening, because we always say those were the good old days, but while those days were happening, we were focusing on the future days. So if we reset the narrative, it's to stop and just say, this is the space that we're holding. This is where we're supposed to be. And let's just be here right now. Tomorrow will bring tomorrow's stressors and tomorrow's things. But what we do know is that we have the ability today to at least take a little bit of a step forward, to let go a little bit probably, and to kind of lean into the unknown, which on the other side, you can find goodness, to Lane's point, beauty, to Lane's point. It's what you see, again, going to how we're seeing the world and trying to manifest and navigate through it. So I would offer to everybody out there to really just, just ponder and really start to look inside, start to allow yourself to become self-aware, and to allow yourself to give yourself grace that your best days, again, are not behind you. You're not identified by what you are, because you are who you are as a person. The things you've done don't define you. Our titles, the things that we've done, we wear them proudly, yes, but they don't define us. I wear this shirt specifically for a reason, to break the stigma. Yes, I am a disabled Army veteran, but I'm not unable. I may have had a stumbling block that stops me from going this way, but now I just learned how to navigate and go around it. So it's about how you begin to look at the world, because it's the same thing that happens in business. The same thing will happen in your personal journey. It's those things that eventually are just kind of redirecting you in different locations. But I see the glass as half full. And if the glass has nothing, I'm going to put some water in it. But that perception of how I look at things begins to manifest how I begin to interact with the world. But I'll kind of leave it to you, Lane, to have your closing thoughts and what you would like to leave with those that are watching until we kind of reconvene again.
Yeah, I think that, we're all on our own individual journey, searching for our own unique way of life, and being able to unwrap our own gifts and skills and how we move forward on our journey for ourselves. But what is going to happen is that people that are going to be on, alongside us, that are going to help us, give us the key to unlock ourselves, to help us unwrap these gifts that we have laid dormant within ourselves for our whole lives. So we look back and like, oh yeah, I remember I had this, and these moments. And like, those are all indicators of our skills, our gifts that we haven't actually become aware of until somebody like DP is like, hey, that thing that you just said, like, you just realize what you just said, right? And so we unlock each other's gifts. And so having a community or a tribe of fellow humble alphas that is going to help identify blind spots. It's going to help you extract your own greatness. It's going to help elevate you in those moments where you need an elevating hand, or like, hey, like, let's go get this, or hey man, you're doing good, you just got to keep going. Whatever we need in that moment, we have community, we have tribe to help us on our journey. And so nobody goes on this journey alone. And so it doesn't matter what level you play, where you find yourself in your experience in life, but having a community of like-minded, heading in a similar trajectory. And the cool thing about this humble alpha movement is that we're all operating under very similar context, very similar principles, very similar, messages, because the book is there. How do you apply quality of life? That's up to everybody. How do you invest in relational capital? That's varied by the moment and varied by the person. And so all these things are an agreed upon vocabulary, agreed upon concepts and principles that allow us to operate under an understanding as we move forward. So that way we're speaking the same language, or we're coming in with intentions that are uplifting and elevating. And we're looking at how we approach life and asking ourselves not only these questions, but asking them of other people. So, how you're going to upgrade is by reading this book is not the only book out there, that's going to help you in life. Of course not. But it's a really great keystone book. And the people that are reading it, the community, the tribe around the Humble Alpha is going to be able to catapult and help you get to where you want to get, help you clarify your vision, help you step into your greatness that much more faster, because everybody's operating under that frequency or very similar frequency, and so get with the tribe, get some accountability partners, read the book with somebody else, whatever it takes for you to realize these limiting beliefs within yourself, and the tools within the book and in the community to let that old stuff go. You're going to be able to step into that next version of yourself, step into your greatness, step into your potential, and live the life that you know that you deserve.
No, I love it, brother, and we'll link obviously with this video where folks can find and tap into the tribe that we have. But I am blessed and humbled by your time, kind of coming on and having this conversation, and sharing with the community what we need, because again, this is how we begin to change the narrative and speak life into those that need it. So I appreciate your time, my brother. It's not the first conversation, but the first recorded conversation, but of many more conversations and amazing, awesome things to come. So I appreciate you spending some time today with me here, and I know it's a great benefit to those that are out there who are able to resound with what we're putting out for them.
Thank you for creating space. Thank you for being you, brother, and looking forward to what we create and what our journeys look like. So it's going to be very exciting.
Awesome. We appreciate you. One-on-one profiles in Audacity, unleashing your humble alpha with Lane. More to come.